Hi, my name is Jennifer Smith. I'm from the Office of Career Planning and Development at UNA, and today I would like to talk to you a little bit about cover letters, resumes, and thank you letters. If you go to our website, career.una.edu, you're going to see a page that says Student, and on this page you're going to see a resume and cover letter writing link. Resume writing, there's not an absolute right or wrong way to write a resume. However, some ways are more aesthetically pleasing to others. We want to make sure that your resume is neat and consistent and organized, and it portrays you in the best light and helps you to put your best foot forward. So on this particular site, you're going to see a link on how to write a resume, as well as some sample resumes. You will see information on cover letters, as well as a sample cover letter. Also, you can find information in our career guide, which is on our home page at the bottom. If you click on this PDF document, you will be able to scroll through. And I'm going to take you first to the table of contents, and we're going to start with cover letters. So I'm going to take us to page 18, and we're going to talk about cover letters. Cover letters are a way to introduce yourself to the company and to articulate why you would be a good fit for that particular position. You want to make sure you stand out in your cover letter. You want to tailor your cover letter to that specific organization. You should never write a generic cover letter and send it out mass-produced copies, because employers know immediately that it's generic and they don't look upon that too favorably. So let's take a look at what goes in a cover letter. The first section of your cover letter should be your salutation. And as you'll see in our guide, never put "to whom it may concern" unless you don't care about getting that job. With the internet today, it's very easy to find the human resources director or the hiring manager or someone at that company that you can address the letter to in that department. Your first paragraph is your statement of purpose. This is your objective, mentioning maybe how you found out about the job, what job it is that you're applying for. They may have several openings, and if you will tell them immediately up front what job it is you're interested in, they can make sure that your information gets to the right person or in the right pile. Your second paragraph is more the meat of your cover letter. This is where you highlight your skills and your coursework and your experiences. So let's just look at a sample. You'll see the contact information here. You'll need to make sure your contact information is at the top. Please ignore the dotted lines that you see on the screen. This is just something that's printed in the book. It's not something you want to put on your official document. You have a date. You have the person's name, the company, the street address, city and state, and then "Dear Mr. or Mrs. or whomever you're addressing this letter to." And this particular person is applying for a research assistant position. You'll see that on the screen here. And so that's telling them up front, this is the job I'm interested in. Again, the meat is telling them, how do I fit that position? Why am I a good fit? Why pick me? This is a chance for you to go above and beyond what's in your resume and be a little more detailed and take that job description and find out what is it that they're wanting me to be able to do, and how do I fit that job description. Make it easy on them. Your third section or paragraph of information is basically reiterating your interest in the position, welcoming them to call you for an interview, letting them know you're excited about the position and you're ready to hear more. And you'll sign with "Sincerely" and your name, and make sure you sign this part right here. Make sure your signature is in this particular blank of information. Some people ask, what does ENC mean? That's basically, if you're going to mail this with your resume, maybe your portfolio or other documents you may have, ENC tells them there's more to this than just this cover letter. So if your information gets mixed up, they'll say, oh wait, this person is supposed to have more information. It's not just a cover letter. So, on your resume, once you've introduced yourself through your cover letter, you're going to want to write a resume. And this is your personal work. Stay away from templates. I can't say that enough. They're not your friend. They're hard to manipulate. They can be difficult for online employment systems to read. We have a number of examples of students who have tried to upload a document, and for whatever reason, it was done in a template, and our blind job program is not able to upload that document correctly, and therefore their information may be messy or disorganized, when in reality on their end it's not, but it's just the way it uploaded. So show your creativity, open a Word document. You can look at a sample, and maybe you say, hey, this sample template looks great. I like the way it looks. Just recreate it in Word. So keep that in mind. When you're writing your resume, you want to make sure that your resume looks professional. You want to make sure that it is organized. Think about it from, what if you were the employer? Would you want to look at that particular resume? I have an example here for us to view. And this has the contact information at the top. Objectives are optional. They are not required. They're basically space fillers. So you don't have to have an objective, but if you want to have one, it's your prerogative. This particular example has a summary of qualifications. Every person listening to this video should have a different resume, or pretty close to a different resume. They should be very varied. Not everyone needs a summary of qualifications. So this does not apply to everyone. There's not a hard and fast rule. There's not a cookie cutter, and we don't want students to think it's a cookie cutter approach. But we have done quite a bit of research, and we've been told what employers like and what they don't like in a resume. And they prefer the bulleted list. It's easy to read. You have to think about, if you were an employer, you might be looking at 50, 60 resumes at a time, if not more, for one position. So if it's hard on them, if they can't really read that resume and make sense of it, then it's not necessarily, you're not going to make it to an interview. They may not, call you in for an interview and things like that. So when you're back on this screen, let's talk about your header. First of all, do not create a header in Word. Again, some employment systems can't read headers. Your best bet is to save it as a PDF before uploading it, and that will help with some of those problems. Make sure you list an address. You don't have to have a current and a permanent, but sometimes people do say they are here at UNA for school, but their permanent address is in Florida, so they might want to make mention of that in case they're seeking opportunities in Florida as well. Be careful of your email address. For example, you see this one here is Party Girl. That's not professional. She might not get any calls because she listed that as her email address. So use something professional. This is how your education should be displayed. You'll list your title of your degree, your month and year of graduation, your school, city and state, your major, and your GPA at 3.0 or higher. Make sure you know what your degree is called. So for example, if you're a business major, you will have a Bachelor of Business Administration. And then you will specify what concentration or major. Check with your advisor. Make sure this information is correct. There have been a lot of changes to degree titles and concentrations and emphasis and things like that. So check with your advisor to make sure you have the correct information on your resume. Your position should be listed in reverse chronological order. Make sure you list what your title in the job was, your dates of employment, the title of the company, the city and state, as well as a bulleted list of what you did specifically, not just cashier, customer service, stock shelves. That's not very detailed. You want to talk about how you manage the cash register and process credit card payments, and maybe you counted down the drawer at the end of the night, or you made daily bank deposits totaling $5,000 or more. Those are the kind of measurable items that an employer might be looking for when they're scanning your resume. You will next, and please keep in mind with relevant experience, this doesn't have to be paid positions. Maybe you've done some volunteer work that's very much related to your field of study. That's okay to include. It doesn't have to be just paid work. When you're using your action verbs, each bullet point should begin with an action verb. Make sure you're using present tense if it's something you're currently doing, past tense if it's something you did in the past. You don't want to be inconsistent with your wording. Here are some examples of headings. Like I said, everyone's resume will look different. Everyone will have different headings, and that's okay. Some of these headings might apply to you and some might not. So you just have to pick and choose which ones really apply to you. Here are some things never to include. Your personal statistics, like your height, your weight, your marital status, health information. Unless you're trying out to be in theater, you're trying to be an actor or an actress or have a career in Hollywood, you don't need a picture on your resume. You don't need to tell your height or your weight. There are some jobs that might require physical or physical fitness abilities of some kind, and that's a different story, but typically you're not going to be asked for that information. References available upon request is a no-no. Go ahead and create a second sheet of paper for references. Your resume will typically be 1 page in length. You can adjust your margins to 0.5. You can use font as small as 11 points. You can negotiate your spacing to try to keep it to 1 page. Some people will not fit on 1 page, and that's okay. Just make sure whatever you do have on your resume is relevant information. Political or religious information should not be included. All of your high school information has to go away once you're past your sophomore year, unless you're an education major and you're wanting to obtain a position in that school. And your GPA 3.0 or above can be included. Otherwise, you want to leave that off. You can look through our career guide and you'll be able to see some sample resumes. I know that for this particular edition, the resumes are turned sideways, so it makes for difficult viewing online. But we have a new edition coming out, and the resumes will be turned around so that it's easier to view online, and you won't have to try and break your neck to see the resumes. Here's a list of action verbs. This is going to tell you, give you some examples of verbs that you can use when you're trying to fill out those bullet points and you're like, what was it I really did? This is a good list to look at. Your references, this is going to tell you how to put together your references. You need 3 to 5, and this is basically how it will look. You want to include the person's name and job title, where they work, their city, their street address, city and state, zip code, phone number, and email address. Make sure, if you use a reference, tell that person, or actually ask that person for permission to use them as a reference. You don't want them to get a phone call and not be ready or prepared and say, oh, I didn't know James was looking for a job. I thought he was happy at such and such. You just don't want them to get caught off guard and say something that they aren't thinking about or that might not come across right. Or maybe it's one of your professors and they have so many students. And yes, they love you and you're special, but you need to make sure that they are aware that, hey, I might get a phone call, because that way they can keep maybe a notepad with some information about you and your highlights about you that they want to mention if they get a phone call about a job for you and they're asking for references. It's always a good idea, and I know I'm scrolling through this and you're kind of getting a preview of some of the different topics that are covered in this guide on interview questions, common interview questions. We're going to focus on that in a separate video. It's always a good idea, once you have sent in your resume and your cover letter, and let's say that for all intents and purposes you have been offered an interview, and you go to your interview and you ace the interview, and as you can see, we're scrolling through some interview information. Thank you notes. That's the next step. So writing a thank you note won't necessarily help you, to get the job, but it's a time for you to express your appreciation for the opportunity to interview for the position, recap your strengths, and just say thank you. This can be handwritten. That's sometimes a nice touch. It can be typed and mailed. Typically, some employers are okay with getting an email thank you, but I would suggest the old-fashioned way, pen and note card to say thank you for your time. That's a little bit of a personal touch. And on that note, I want to thank you for your time and listening today to me talk about cover letters, resumes, and thank you letters. If our office can be of assistance to you in the future, please remember we're in GUC 202, and you can find us on the web at career.una.edu. You'll see our phone number here. Give us a call, make an appointment. We'll be glad to help you map out a plan for your resume and make sure that it fits your needs and is marketed to the correct employer. Because again, your resume might change with every job as well as your cover letter. And we're here to help you make sure that is a good change and that it's something that employers want to read. Thank you.